what this is really about, what the real reasons are. For one thing, it's a brilliant way, and it's working very well, thank you very much, as a way of funneling hundreds of billions of dollars into the bank accounts of big war industries. In March 2005, just a couple weeks after the big no, NATO announced, and it was hardly mentioned in the media at all, you may have completely missed this, NATO makes an announcement that they are going to be building their own, quote, deployable theater missile defense capability to give protection to troops against incoming missiles. But that didn't get mentioned. This was, funnily enough, just a couple weeks after Canada said no, and of course Canada is a big member of NATO. Now, Canada has been involved in NATO efforts to build missile defense weapon systems for at least 10 years. You may have heard recently that there's some inkling of news about how maybe there might be some question about whether Canada should get involved in this new NATO effort to do something about missile defense. But in fact, we've been doing that for at least 10 years. Canada provided and is providing this thing called RadarSat, which is a satellite that operates 24/7 and has been used in all sorts of different wars since '95, since it was launched. But RadarSat 2, which is going to be launched later this year, it will be used in first strike, in targeting missile defense weapons for first strike attacks in NATO-led wars and U.S. wars in the near future to hit alleged missile launchers. In Iran, well, maybe that's where they're going to use it. Maybe they're going to wait until RadarSat 2 is up there before they hit Iran. I'm just going to quickly go through some of the different government departments and agencies that are involved. The Canadian Space Agency has funded lots of Canadian companies. The main thing that they think it's the crown jewel in their whole existence that they love to point to is RadarSat. They're so proud of RadarSat. It cost over $1 billion, $1.15 billion, 90% of that paid by the Canadian taxpayers, and then it was privatized and handed over to a Vancouver-based company called McDonnell Detweiler and Associates, which was 100% owned by an American company called Orbital Sciences, which is one of the biggest rocket makers for missile defense weapons. So our Canadian government would spend $1 billion of our money on, we paid for this, then they gave it to a company that's owned by a missile defense company. Just more on that later. Back to this building. When Pettigrew, our Foreign Affairs Minister, said that he would be very pleased and it would be very good if Canadian companies got involved, does that mean anything? Because, he's just the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Well, in fact, Foreign Affairs, it does mean something, because the Department of Foreign Affairs funds the participation of Canadian corporations in foreign arms bazaars. It helps organize trade missions for Canadian companies that go around the world, including the United States, to sell their products. It helps bring war industry representatives together with our diplomats or trade commissioners that are based in Canadian embassies around the world. And it issues all the export permits that war industries need to sell their products. Although actually, to the United States, we don't need any permits. It's totally open. Industry Canada. Industry Canada, its main job is to give money to industries, our money. And it's given about $5 billion to Canadian weapons, military and other military production companies over the last few decades. But $5 billion is a fair amount. Now, at the bottom half of the screen, you see strategic business opportunities. That is a little section from a PowerPoint presentation that was done by Industry Canada's Senior Investment Officer for Defense Industries. And he presented this at a war industry conference and a trade show, Reed Arms Bazaar, in Alberta in October 2004. And that is when Canada was still trying to decide whether we were going to get involved in missile defense. And here he is, he said there were 5 strategic business opportunities. And the first one on the list was ballistic missile defense. Now, it says potential high technology participation by Canadian firms. It says potential. And it says, no decision yet on official participation. But the fact is, they had a ballistic missile defense officer with an email that they projected on the screen at an arms bazaar to weapons companies while Canada was still deciding whether we were going to get involved. Well, hey, I think that means that we already were involved in the, there's... Now, the former industry minister was a guy named David Emerson. And he spoke favorably about Canada's, the potential for, he thought missile defense was a great idea. And I didn't mention that he was on the board of McDonald Detweiler and Associates. So now we have the Department of National Defense. The Defense Minister, David Pratt, sent a carefully worded letter to the U.S. Secretary of State, Colin Powell, officially expressing that Canada wanted, quote, to ensure the closest possible involvement and insight for Canada, both government and industry, in the U.S. missile defense program. This was in January of 2004. Doesn't sound like they were still deciding. And he also said in 2004 that the commitment to increased government-to-government and industry-to-industry cooperation. Now, if you say you're committed to increased participation, doesn't that mean, don't you have to already be involved to increase your involvement? So it's there. One of the things that people don't know about is that D&D has done is it's funded. I'll talk a little bit more about this, but basically it's funded some sensor technology, targeting sensors for missile defense weapon systems, and we've been working on these things for 10 years with the Dutch to put on missile defense on our warships, German, Dutch, and Canadian warships, so that we're already very deeply integrated into the U.S. Military machine, especially through our navies. No other country is as deeply integrated into the U.S. Navy as Canada is. We've been preparing for 10 years building this technology called Sirius, which I'll deal with in a little bit. That's one way that our D&D has been getting involved in missile defense, is through getting the technology, putting it on our ships so that it's there and ready and for the time when missile defense, theater missile defense is up and running, and we'll just be there and we'll just be part of it. The other thing is that we take part in war games, bilateral war games with the U.S., NORAD war games, and NATO war games that are preparing us for missile defense operations in the near future. Defense Research and Development Canada spends $300 million a year, and it has 6 world-class labs and research facilities across Canada, 1,500 paid staff working full-time, scientists, engineers, technicians, creating, developing better and fancier weapon systems, paid by the Canadian public, and some of the projects that they're involved with are definitely missile defense weapons related. And one of the stated functions of DRDC is to build technology that is helpful for our allies. Not just for our own military, but for our allies. So we're spending all this money to help that's part of it, is to help our allies. It's not enough that we have DRDC that's specifically just working on, weapons scientists. We have to also contribute through NRC, and NRC was the lead agency for promoting these QIPs. Now, QIPs are quantum well infrared photodetectors, and as you can see here, the quotation from a government document saying that QUIP project is a key contributor to the collaborative work with the Ballistic Missile Defense Organization, significant implications for future exploitation to support U.S. space-based infrared surveillance systems, surveillance from space, and missile defense applications. Now this guy here, he's H.C. Liu, and he heads NRC's Institute for Microstructural Scientists. And just this week, he was in Sri Lanka at the QUIP 2006 International Conference. And this guy, who works for NRC full-time, he has co-chaired all of these international QUIP conferences since they started in the year 2000. So we pay for this guy to work on this stuff, and then we pay for him to travel around the world and rub shoulders with these missile defense people from other countries. And basically what it does is it helps to distinguish between the decoys and the real warheads that this central problem that they're having with the missile defense system.